Billionaire cheated while his pregnant wife slept his mistress, thought she won. A sprawling mansion at the edge of London, a wife radiant in pregnancy yet haunted by suspicion, and a husband whose late-night business calls hide a secret passion. This is where our story begins. Beneath crystal chandeliers and lavish dinners, cracks form in the perfect facade of the wealthy elite. A mistress waits in the shadows, convinced she has won a man who seems bored with his vows. But what happens when hidden truths collide with raw desperation? Here, alliances shift on a whim, hearts break in a single breath, and destinies shift under the weight of deceit. Welcome to a tale of betrayal, obsession, and unexpected salvation. Jonathan Maxwell was a name that commanded both envy and respect throughout London's elite circles. Tall, charismatic, and sharply dressed, he had transformed his family's modest trading company into Maxwell Holdings, an empire spanning venture capital, real estate, and luxury goods. Shareholders praised his shrewd mind and risk-taking spirit. Charities lauded his philanthropic gestures, from funding art galleries to donating generously to children's hospitals. His wife, Sophie Maxwell, epitomized grace and elegance, a woman whose background in fine arts only enhanced the couple's reputation as cultured patrons. The Maxwell mansion stood regally on a manicured estate in Mayfair, its driveway lined with imported cypress trees. Inside, floors of polished marble reflected crystal chandeliers, while original artworks by Manet and Monet adorned the walls. For all its grandeur, the mansion had grown quieter with each passing month. Sophie, now 6 months pregnant, was starting to sense that the hush masking these corridors held more than just peaceful domestic routine. Something else lingered in the air, tension thick as fog. She still remembered the day she told Jonathan about her pregnancy. His face lit with a joy she'd rarely seen, and for a brief moment she believed a new chapter of closeness awaited them. But soon afterward, Jonathan's schedule became more punishing than ever: boardroom meetings at odd hours, impromptu trips abroad, late-night phone calls that he hushed the moment she entered the room. Whenever Sophie tried to speak to him, to recapture the magic of the early days of their marriage, he seemed distant, as though fighting a private battle he refused to name. On a warm summer evening, Sophie found herself alone in the master suite. She stared at the sumptuous bed, unable to shake the suspicion that something was terribly amiss. She pressed a hand to her belly, soothing their unborn child, whispering that everything would be all right. But in her heart, doubt gnawed like an insatiable parasite. Down the hallway, Jonathan stood in his private study, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was hushed, urgent. On the other end of the line was Lily Ross, a name Sophie had heard only once at a gala, introduced casually as a colleague's +1. In truth, Lily was Jonathan's mistress, and she had quietly seized Jonathan's imagination with her magnetic poise and fearless ambition. She was the flash of excitement in a life Jonathan found increasingly stifling, a secret he indulged while his pregnant wife slept, oblivious to the cracks forming in their marriage. At that moment, Jonathan ended the call with Lily. He gazed at the closed door separating him from Sophie and felt a pang of guilt. He almost convinced himself that he could maintain both relationships without consequence. But fate moves swiftly against those who believe they can cheat responsibility forever. And so the stage was set. A husband entangled in a reckless affair, a wife pregnant and unsuspecting, and a mistress certain she had won the prized millionaire's heart. Yet none of them were prepared for the tumultuous drama about to unfold. Nestled near Hyde Park was Lily Ross's luxurious apartment, an extension of Jonathan's covert generosity. Lily was not shy about admitting she liked fine things: designer handbags, exclusive art pieces, imported wines. She had a background that no one in Jonathan's circles fully understood or cared to ask about. An orphan who'd been raised in Liverpool, she'd spent most of her early adulthood scaling the social ladder with steely determination. By the time she reached London, she'd learned how to charm, manipulate, and seize opportunities. She first encountered Jonathan at a charity auction for the Royal Academy of Arts. Sophie had been at his side then, radiant in a cream gown, but Lily saw the momentary flicker of restlessness in Jonathan's eyes. She made certain she was introduced by a mutual acquaintance, engaged him in witty banter about investment strategies, and subtly dropped the detail that she was a freelance acquisitions consultant for high-net-worth individuals. It was the perfect lure. Their initial coffee meeting to discuss business morphed into a string of private dinners. Soon, Lily found herself stepping into a black, chauffeured car to discreet locations, drawn deeper into a romance that was never publicly acknowledged. In those early weeks, Jonathan seemed excited by the danger. He confided in Lily about his frustrations, pressures from the board, the endless philanthropic obligations, and a marriage that felt more like a business alliance than a passionate union. Lily listened, feigning compassion while capitalizing on each vulnerable moment. In truth, she viewed Jonathan as a golden ticket. She had grown tired of scraping by, catering to the vanity of men who only wanted fleeting entertainment. Jonathan Maxwell was different. He had substance, influence, and a thick wallet to match. Soon enough, he was paying for Lily's penthouse, remodeling it with top-of-the-line furnishings, and showering her with lavish gifts. With each indulgence, Lily's confidence grew. She was sure Jonathan was teetering on the edge of leaving Sophie. Late one night, Lily reclined on her chaise lounge, swirling a glass of expensive Merlot, reflecting on the shift in Jonathan's behavior. He still visited, still expressed desire, but hints of worry stained his features whenever he glanced at his phone. She knew Sophie was pregnant. Jonathan had confessed it in a hushed, almost apologetic tone. Though Lily pretended shock and mild dismay, inside she burned with irritation. She believed the pregnancy might tie him more firmly to his wife, exactly the opposite of what Lily wanted. She remembered how Jonathan's eyes lit with concern when she suggested they go public. "I can't," he'd insisted. "Not yet. Things are too complicated." Lily recognized her old enemy, timidity. Men like Jonathan thrived on adrenaline, but when push came to shove, they also feared losing the comforts of reputation and respect. Lily set down her glass, tapped a few keys on her phone, and opened her chat thread with Jonathan. "Missing you," she typed, snapping a quick, alluring photo of herself in lingerie. The moment she hit send, a triumphant smirk curled her lips. She was certain Jonathan would respond, and certain she was winning. Sophie Maxwell might have the legal ring and the unborn child, but Lily held Jonathan's passion, desire, and heart. Or so she believed. Sophie awoke before dawn, stirred by a sudden flutter from the baby in her womb. She smiled softly, imagining the tiny life developing each day. The stillness of the mansion was unnerving, and her thoughts drifted to Jonathan. He hadn't come to bed until the early hours, slipping beneath the sheets so quietly that she wondered if he had been trying not to wake her or hide something. She rose and slipped on a satin robe, heading to the spacious kitchen. The staff had left fresh fruit and pastries. Sophie poured herself a cup of chamomile tea, gazing out the window at the estate's garden. That was when she noticed Jonathan's phone on the marble counter, lighting up with a notification. An unsettling pang pinched her chest. She had never been one to spy, always trusting her husband's privacy. But something gnawed at her, an urge to see whether her suspicions were groundless. She hesitated for a long moment before picking up the phone. The lock screen showed a message from LROS's. The text read, "Thinking of you. Last night was unforgettable." Sophie's heart pounded. The words confirmed every dread that had been festering in her mind. Hand trembling, she put the phone back exactly where it was. She felt a roiling mix of anger, hurt, and denial. Could there be an innocent explanation? Possibly a misunderstanding. But the memory of her father's infidelity with a family friend years ago surged to the forefront of her mind, reminding her that these things rarely came without consequences. Later that day, Sophie confronted the question of how to proceed. For all her heartbreak, she believed in confrontation. She couldn't let Jonathan continue weaving lies around them. With the baby on the way, she owed it to herself and their child to demand the truth. But she feared she might lose everything in the process. Meanwhile, Jonathan spent the morning at Maxwell Holdings. His corner office overlooked the Thames, a testament to his success. Yet as he stared at business projections, his mind drifted to Lily. He wondered if her eagerness for him to leave Sophie was growing. A pang of guilt and dread twisted his stomach. He had no illusions about Lily's ambitions. She was upfront about wanting stability, but she was also cunning. If he delayed too long, she might do something rash. By mid-morning, Jonathan was on a call with Harold Denham, a private equity giant and longtime family friend. Harold asked politely about Sophie's health and the baby's progress. Jonathan gritted his teeth. These innocuous questions rattled him. How could he chat casually about fatherhood while leading a double life? When the call ended, he sank into his leather chair, feeling the first real tremors of regret. Could he salvage his marriage if Sophie discovered everything? Would he even want to? As doubt simmered, Jonathan recalled Lily's electric energy, the wild nights, and how she lit a spark in him. He also remembered Sophie's gentle smile, her unwavering loyalty, and the baby who would soon enter their world. Two roads lay before him, each promising consequences he couldn't fully anticipate. That evening, Sophie waited in the drawing room, a space decorated in warm tones of amber and gold, usually reserved for entertaining high-profile guests. Tonight, it served as the stage for a different type of encounter. She had arranged the setting meticulously, turning off the bright overhead chandeliers in favor of softer table lamps, hoping that the subdued lighting might help keep her emotions in check. Jonathan arrived home just before dusk, shoulders slumped, tie loosened. He glanced around, noting the unusual hush. The staff had been given the evening off at Sophie's request. As he approached, Sophie's posture straightened and her expression grew resolute. "We need to talk," she said, her voice almost whisper-soft but trembling with barely contained tension. Jonathan forced a weary smile. "Of course, darling. Are you okay? How's the baby?" Sophie's knuckles whitened around the armrest of the sofa. "The baby's fine. I wish I could say the same about us." Her words landed heavily, and Jonathan's eyes flickered with alarm. He sank into a nearby chair. "What's going on?" Sophie swallowed hard. Images of the text on Jonathan's phone flashed in her mind. "I found a message on your phone this morning from someone named LROS's. It implied intimacy, enough that I can guess what's been happening." Jonathan paled, breath catching in his throat. He had rehearsed possible denials and half-truths, but seeing the pain in Sophie's eyes disarmed him. Still, he tried. "It's not Sophie, it's complicated." Tears threatened Sophie's composure, but she willed herself to stay strong. "Don't lie. I can handle the truth better than deceit." Jonathan looked away, guilt radiating from him. "Yes, Lily Ross is someone I've been involved with," he admitted. "I didn't mean for it to go so far. It just happened." Sophie inhaled a shaky breath. "You say it just happened, as if that absolves you. You chose to keep seeing her. You chose to betray me while I'm pregnant with our child." The finality of her words stung. Jonathan felt an urge to apologize, to rationalize, but every explanation sounded hollow. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said weakly. "I've been overwhelmed by the company, expectations, the baby. So you sought comfort elsewhere?" Sophie's voice wavered between fury and heartbreak. We could have worked through these feelings together. He bowed his head, unable to meet her gaze. I know. I've made a terrible mistake. Silence stretched. Sophie wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold her world together. Finally, she asked, "Do you love her? Do you plan on leaving me?" Jonathan's head snapped up. The question's gravity crushed him. Did he love Lily, or did he merely crave the thrill? Did he want a life with Sophie, or had he gone too far for redemption? "I don't want to leave you," he murmured. "I'm confused, but, Sophie, you and the baby mean everything. I can't walk away from that." A tear slipped down Sophie's cheek. She nodded slowly, though sorrow shrouded her features. "We're at a crossroads. This betrayal isn't just a mistake. It's a bomb that's gone off in our marriage. If you expect me to stay, I need more than words, Jonathan. I need honesty, commitment, and for you to end it with her once and for all." He swallowed hard. "I will," he promised, though a small part of him wondered if he truly had the strength to break the dangerous bond he'd formed with Lily. For now, though, he would do anything to soothe the anguish he had inflicted upon his wife. The morning after Sophie's confrontation, Jonathan set out for Lily's apartment with a weight in his chest. The city bustled around him, oblivious to the personal crisis unfolding behind the tinted windows of his chauffeur's sedan. He replayed Sophie's tearful ultimatum in his mind: cut ties with Lily or lose everything. His heart pounded with conflict. Ending it with Lily seemed necessary, yet he couldn't ignore the surge of longing that pulled him toward her. Outside Lily's penthouse building, he drew in a calming breath and stepped into the sleek lobby. Moments later, he stood at Lily's door, hand hesitating mid-knock. The door swung open, revealing Lily in a satin robe, her face lit with expectation. "I didn't think you'd come this early," she teased, ushering him in. The aroma of fresh coffee wafted from the kitchen. Lily's eyes glimmered with a confidence that unnerved Jonathan. He cleared his throat. "We need to talk." She arched an eyebrow. That phrase never bodes well. They moved to the living room, where Lily sank onto a plush sofa, legs crossed elegantly. Jonathan remained standing, hands clasped. "Sophie knows," he said quietly. "She found a message on my phone. We had a long conversation last night." Lily lifted her chin. "So it's out in the open then. Good. Means there's no more sneaking around." The flirtatious spark in her eyes told him she had no intention of backing down. She leaned forward, lips curving into a small smile. "Now we can move on to the next step of our relationship. You're choosing me, right?" He paused, 1,000 emotions stirring. Lily's directness took him aback. "Actually, I told Sophie I would end things." The words felt like shards of glass leaving his throat. "She's pregnant, Lily. I have a responsibility to her, and the baby." The moment froze. Lily's expression morphed from smug anticipation to stunned disbelief. Then anger flickered across her features. "You're ending things?" she repeated slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "After everything we've shared, everything you promised?" He swallowed, stepping closer to her. "I didn't plan this. I never wanted to hurt you, but Sophie's my wife. We're about to start a family. I can't walk away from that." Lily's eyes narrowed, her voice trembling with pent-up fury. "So you fed me sweet words about escaping your cold marriage, only to cling to it the moment your wife finds out? I was never going to stay hidden forever, Jonathan. I want a real future, not scraps." Her words dug at his conscience. The memory of late nights in Lily's arms, the laughter, the thrill, all echoed in his mind. But Sophie's tear-stained face and the baby he had felt kick in her womb weighed heavier. "I can't do this anymore," he said, voice tight. "Please, try to understand." Lily shot to her feet, fists clenched. "You think you can just walk out? It's not that simple. I've invested months into this relationship, and I won't be tossed aside like an old coat." "You owe me, Jonathan." He took a step back, unsettled by her vehemence. "I'll help you financially if you need it. I'm not abandoning you in that sense." A humorless laugh escaped Lily's lips. "Money? You think that's all I want? I wanted you, and if I can't have you..." She drew a sharp breath, eyes blazing. "I'm not going down quietly." A wave of dread rolled over Jonathan. He saw the steel in Lily's gaze. She wasn't making idle threats. This was a woman, scorned one, who possessed knowledge, possibly evidence, that could tear his reputation apart. As he left the penthouse, he couldn't shake the fear that Lily's next move would be far more destructive than he could anticipate. Sophie stood on the veranda overlooking the rose garden, the summer sun bearing down on her shoulders. She ran a hand over her belly, trying to find solace in the soft flutter of the baby's movements. The confrontation with Jonathan had sapped her strength. She had demanded he end the affair, and he promised to do so. But part of her questioned whether Lily would accept the finality or attempt a counterattack. Anxiety coiled tight within her. No sooner had that thought settled when Sophie's personal phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed a number she didn't recognize. Reluctantly, she answered, bracing herself. "Mistress Maxwell," came a woman's voice. "This is Lily Ross." Sophie's pulse hammered. She glanced around, half expecting Jonathan to appear. "How did you get my number?" she asked quietly. A light chuckle sounded from the other end. "I have my ways. Listen, I'm not calling to argue. I just think we need to have a talk, woman to woman. You deserve to know the truth about Jonathan." Sophie's grip tightened. "What truth would that be? That you slept with my husband while I carried his child? I'm well aware." Lily's tone turned cold. "Don't be naive. Jonathan lied to both of us. He told me you two were practically separated, that the marriage was loveless. He said you were only staying together because of appearances. But now he's run back to you, making me look like a fool." Sophie's anger flared. "He said it was over with you. Why call me now? To gloat? To twist the knife further? I'm calling because you should ask yourself if Jonathan's telling you the full story. He's juggling multiple deals, not just in business. I'm not convinced he can truly walk away from me." Sophie's heart pounded at the suggestion, but she refused to let Lily sense her fear. "Jonathan and I will handle our marriage privately. We don't need your interference." A bitter laugh crackled through the phone. "Suit yourself. Just remember, if he slips away at night again, you'll know where he's going. And if you want to know the depths of his dishonesty, I have proof texts, photos. I'd be more than happy to share." Sophie ended the call abruptly, shaking with a blend of rage and despair. She had no interest in hearing more from the woman who had helped shatter her trust. But Lily's ominous tone lingered in her mind like a dark cloud. Could Jonathan truly sever ties with Lily, or was she clinging to illusions? Meanwhile, Jonathan wrestled with his own turmoil. He was at Maxwell Holdings, poring over spreadsheets in an attempt to distract himself. But his thoughts remained fixed on Lily's vow not to remain silent. The legalities of blackmail and scandal churned in his mind. If Lily decided to go public, he risked losing major investors, philanthropic supporters, and the social standing he'd worked so hard to build. During a break, Jonathan received a phone call from an unknown number. He picked up reluctantly. The voice on the other end was chillingly calm. "Mr. Maxwell, I'm a friend of Lily Ross. We should chat soon about those photos of you two. They'd fetch a handsome price in the tabloids." He froze, dread plunging into his core. "Who is this?" "Consider me your wake-up call," the man replied. Then the line went dead. Jonathan realized that Lily might have enlisted outside help, or perhaps someone else had sniffed out the affair and intended to capitalize on it. Either way, he was on the verge of a crisis that threatened both his marriage and his finances. As he stared at the blank phone screen, only one thing was certain: the storm was no longer just brewing. It was about to break upon them all. Morning light filtered through heavy drapes in the Maxwell mansion's main bedroom as Sophie attempted to steady her nerves. Sleep had been elusive, overshadowed by Lily's sinister call. She rose from bed, careful of her growing belly, and resolved to do something she had avoided for too long, gather tangible proof of Jonathan's activities. If she was truly determined to save her marriage or make the difficult decision to leave, she needed clarity. She ventured into Jonathan's private study. A sense of intrusion gnawed at her conscience, but betrayal had eroded her trust. On the large mahogany desk lay piles of documents related to Maxwell Holdings. Sophie wasn't interested in corporate transactions. Instead, she found a hidden drawer that Jonathan often locked. Surprisingly, it was slightly ajar. Inside, she discovered an envelope filled with receipts for extravagant dinners at exclusive restaurants she'd never visited, along with flight tickets for trips she didn't remember Jonathan taking for official business. Many were to European cities: Paris, Milan, Barcelona, places that signified romance. Seeing the dates, Sophie's hands shook. These overlapped with nights Jonathan claimed to be on business. Heart pounding, she was about to close the drawer when her eyes fell on a small black notebook. Flipping through it, she found scribbled notes, addresses, times, cryptic references to personal rendezvous. Lily's name was there, underlined on several pages, along with references to hush payments. Sophie sank onto a leather armchair, tears welling in her eyes. The affair was so much more extensive than she had realized. It wasn't just a few stolen nights. Jonathan had poured money into these escapades, even paying hush money. Though her stomach churned with betrayal, she also felt an overwhelming sadness at the lengths. Jonathan had gone to hide his truth. Downstairs, Jonathan was in the foyer, mid-conversation with Andrew Carlyle, his trusted friend and legal counsel. Andrew had arrived early, sensing something was amiss. Jonathan explained in hushed tones about the phone call from Lily's friend, a possible blackmailer. Andrew's expression turned grave. "This could be dangerous, Jonathan," Andrew warned. "If they release compromising photos, you could lose business partners. Your philanthropic ventures might distance themselves too. Reputations are fragile." Jonathan pinched the bridge of his nose. "I realize that. But what can I do? Paying them off will only encourage more demands." Andrew considered for a moment. "First, we gather evidence of their threats. We'll threaten legal action if they attempt to blackmail you further. But if Lily is involved, you need to settle things with her immediately." Jonathan glanced up the sweeping staircase, a pang of guilt striking him as he imagined how Sophie might be feeling. "I told Lily it was over. She didn't take it well." Andrew's gaze hardened. "Then you must reinforce that boundary. No more half measures. If you give her an inch, she'll seize a mile." "And Sophie, how is she coping?" Jonathan's face fell. "Not well. I'm responsible for this mess." If I could turn back time, Andrew placed a reassuring hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "It's done. Now we deal with the fallout. This is not only about your image, but your marriage, your child. Don't let fear paralyze you." Just then, Sophie appeared at the landing, clutching the envelope and notebook. Upon spotting Andrew, she halted, uncertain. Jonathan's eyes flicked from her to the documents in her hands. A terrible understanding dawned on him. Their gazes locked in a moment fraught with heartbreak. Sophie descended the stairs, raising the items for Jonathan and Andrew to see. She spoke in a trembling voice, tears brimming. "I found these in your study, so it's true, all of it. And there's more I don't even know." Jonathan's jaw worked wordlessly. Andrew silently took a step back, understanding that this was a conversation between husband and wife. The fault lines in Jonathan's carefully curated life were gaping wide. Whether they could be repaired or even should be remained painfully uncertain. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the mansion's grand windows, illuminating motes of dust swirling in the tension-filled air. Jonathan and Sophie had retreated to the library to talk, the envelope of receipts and the small black notebook lying ominously between them on a polished coffee table. It was the first time they'd been alone since Sophie discovered the evidence. Sophie's breath trembled as she finally spoke. "You used our finances to pay for trips with her? For hush money? How long did you think you could continue?" Jonathan slumped in the armchair, head in his hands. "I never wanted it to get this far. At first, it was just dinners, a way to escape my stress. Then it escalated hotels, trips. Lily demanded more and more, and I gave in." He looked up, eyes red. "I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." Sophie's voice shook with exhaustion and heartbreak. "I'm pregnant, Jonathan. I need stability. Instead, I'm married to a stranger who's spending our resources on another woman." Before Jonathan could respond, the library door burst open, revealing Lily Ross herself. She was escorted by a visibly flustered household staff member. Lily's eyes immediately swept the room, settling on Sophie with a boldness that defied any notion of shame. "I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell," stammered the staffer. She insisted. Jonathan stood abruptly. "It's all right. Leave us." The staffer bowed out, leaving Lily to face a stunned Sophie and an alarmed Jonathan. Sophie's pulse raced. She'd never seen Lily in person like this, poised and unapologetically beautiful in a fitted dress. The tension crackled. "What are you doing here?" Jonathan demanded, his voice low and urgent. Lily's lips tightened. "You wouldn't answer my calls or messages. I thought it was time we had a frank discussion." Her gaze flicked to Sophie. "All of us." Sophie rose from the sofa, her protective instincts surging for both herself and her unborn child. "A frank discussion? You've already said enough by intruding into my marriage." Lily arched an eyebrow. "Don't act so surprised. Jonathan allowed me into his life long before I set foot in this house. Now, I'm here to ensure he doesn't spin more lies." Jonathan's temper flared. "This is inappropriate, Lily. You can't just barge into my home. We're done. I told you that." Lily offered a cold smile. "You made that clear, but you failed to consider the consequences. Daniel, my associate, he wants a bigger payout for keeping quiet. He threatened me, too, claiming I'd wasted his time if I didn't secure a substantial sum. Do you realize the mess we're all in?" Sophie's eyes snapped to Jonathan. "Daniel, another accomplice?" Lily's expression turned bitter. "Accomplice is a strong word. He found out about our affair and offered absolution, threatening to expose Jonathan if he didn't pay up. I never intended it to spiral, but it has. Now Daniel is out of control." Jonathan's mind raced, recalling the call from the unknown number. "So Daniel is the one blackmailing me?" Lily sighed. "Yes. He took photos of us, private moments. He's prepared to leak them unless he gets a hefty sum. I came here thinking we could handle this before it explodes." Sophie felt the blood drain from her face. The humiliating idea of personal photos splashed across tabloids made her stomach churn. It wasn't just about Jonathan's downfall. It would drag her and the unborn child into a public scandal as well. A suffocating silence followed. Then Sophie found her voice, addressing Lily directly. "If you want to fix this, you should tell the police everything about Daniel and about your involvement." Lily bristled, shooting a glare at Jonathan. "I'd be implicating myself. I just want out of this nightmare. If Jonathan pays Daniel quietly, maybe we can end it." Jonathan set his jaw. "I refuse to give in to blackmail. Paying him will only invite more threats." He turned to Sophie, desperation flickering. "Andrew Carlyle is helping me build a case. We'll threaten Daniel with legal action if he doesn't back off." Lily crossed her arms. "Then he'll leak everything. Do you really want that gamble?" Sophie steadied herself. She saw the fear in Jonathan's eyes, the desperation in Lily's stance. All around them, the fortress of wealth and respectability was cracking. Finally, Sophie spoke. We won't live under blackmail. If that means facing public scandal, so be it. But I won't condone hush money from our child's future." Lily flinched, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, have it your way. But if Daniel destroys our lives, I hope you're prepared." With that, Lily turned on her heel and swept out of the library. As her footsteps echoed through the mansion, Sophie sank back onto the sofa, trembling. Jonathan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her arm. She didn't recoil, but neither did she lean into him. Outside, thunder rumbled as though the heavens themselves braced for the storm about to break. The tension escalated over the next week. Threatening calls and texts continued, pressuring Jonathan to pay. The blackmailer, Daniel Fletcher, demanded an astronomical sum within 72 hours. Andrew Carlyle worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, tracing phone numbers, and drafting injunctions in case Daniel attempted a public scandal. Yet each day that passed felt like stepping deeper into a minefield. Sophie, drained by the stress, retreated into the mansion's art studio, an airy room she had converted to hold her easel and painting supplies. Before marrying Jonathan, she'd owned a small gallery in Chelsea. Painting had always been her refuge, a place where colours and shapes could speak louder than words. Now, feeling the baby's soft kicks, she tried to lose herself in the gentle strokes of pastel on canvas. Her subject was a serene landscape, rolling hills, a lavender sky, a world without betrayal or blackmail. Yet no matter how she tried, her heart was too heavy to find true solace. One afternoon, Jonathan entered the studio, knocking softly. Sophie stiffened, but nodded for him to come in. He approached, hands tucked in his pockets, eyes filled with remorse. "Andrew has some leads on Daniel's location," he said quietly. "We might be able to preempt him before he sells the story to anyone." Sophie paused her painting. "That's good news," she murmured, though her tone carried the lingering bruise of betrayal. Jonathan hesitated, looking around at the vibrant array of paint tubes and brushes. "I remember how you used to come home smelling of turpentine," he said, a wistful note in his voice. "You'd be exhausted, but also alive, brimming with stories about the artworks you found." "I miss those days." She set her brush aside. "So do I," she admitted, surprising both of them. "We were happier then. Things were simpler." He swallowed hard. "I'd give anything to go back, to correct the path I took." Silence stretched between them. Then Sophie sighed. "What's done is done. Now we have to decide where we go from here." Jonathan took a tentative step closer. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, a new start, anything. I know I've given you no reason to trust me, but I love you, Sophie, and I love our child." She searched his face, seeing the raw vulnerability. She wanted to believe him, but the memory of Lily's defiant intrusion and the blackmail threats overshadowed any comfort. Yet Sophie also realized that hate and bitterness would only poison her further. Maybe the best solution for her own peace was to at least attempt to see if Jonathan's remorse was genuine. "Show me," she finally said. "Show me that you can be better. Words mean little now." He nodded, tears glistening. "I will," and for a moment, a fragile hope flickered in his eyes. That evening, Jonathan began taking small steps. He handed over every device, account, and password to Sophie, allowing her full transparency into his digital life. He cancelled the credit cards that Lily had access to. He even prepared a formal statement with Andrew Carlyle, disclaiming any hush money arrangement, ready to submit it to the authorities if Daniel went public. In the hush of the mansion that night, Sophie tried to relax in bed, replaying the day's events. Perhaps there was a sliver of redemption. Perhaps they could weather the scandal if they faced it together. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the faint scent of impending rain, an apt mirror for the turmoil that was still far from over. As dawn broke on a stormy morning, Andrew Carlisle's investigative efforts finally paid off. He uncovered an address tied to Daniel Fletcher, a serviced apartment in a less affluent district outside Mayfair. Jonathan, determined to end the nightmare, insisted on confronting Daniel himself. Andrew arranged for a discreet security team, and they set out in a convoy of unmarked cars. Sophie, too anxious to remain at home, decided to accompany them despite Jonathan's protest. She refused to be sidelined any longer, especially when it came to matters threatening her family. The ride was tense, with the sky dark and brooding overhead, thunder echoing their own trepidation. They arrived at a modest brick building with narrow windows. Rain pelted the sidewalk as Jonathan, Sophie, Andrew, and 2 security men ascended a dingy flight of stairs. Apartment 4B. Andrew knocked firmly. The door cracked open, revealing a thin man with sharp features and dark eyes that flicked nervously over the unexpected visitors. Daniel Fletcher. His gaze landed on Jonathan, then Sophie, her pregnant belly visible beneath her coat. A flicker of recognition, and something else, guilt, perhaps crossed his face before he sneered. "What is this? A family outing? Thought you'd be alone." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You've gone too far, Daniel. We know you're behind the blackmail attempts. We have proof linking you to threatening calls, the demands for money, the photos." Daniel forced a grin, though it wavered. "Maybe I got a few pictures. So what? You plan to pay up or see them splashed across every tabloid in London? I'm sure Sophie here wouldn't enjoy the public humiliation." Sophie stepped forward, ignoring Jonathan's protective hand on her arm. "Don't you dare use me as a pawn. You're messing with my child's future, and you have no right." Daniel shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "I have every right to claim what I'm owed. Jonathan fired me from Maxwell Holdings under shady pretenses. He made me the scapegoat for a failing division. My career was ruined." Jonathan's voice rose. "I fired you because you embezzled funds, Daniel. I have the records. You think blackmail will redeem you?" Daniel's eyes flickered with anger. "You all live in a mansion while I scrape by. Lily was supposed to help me get an even bigger payday, but now she's waffling. She's decided you're not worth destroying completely, apparently. Pathetic." Andrew Carlisle interjected calmly. "We've prepared a legal packet for you, Daniel. This outlines the evidence of your extortion attempts, and we have enough to press charges. Unless you step back and hand over every incriminating photo and video, you'll be facing a prison term." Daniel's facade cracked. He glanced beyond them, likely eyeing the security guards lingering in the hallway. His bravado faltered. "You can't silence me," he growled, though his voice trembled. Sophie lifted her chin. "We won't be silenced either. If you leak anything, we'll press charges and expose your history. You might make some money for a short time, but you'll be blacklisted everywhere. And you'll still face legal consequences." For a moment, Daniel looked like a cornered animal, calculating his odds. Then he stepped back, muttering a curse under his breath. "Fine," he spat, storming inside to retrieve a thumb drive. He tossed it at Andrew. "There. That's all I have. Now get out." Andrew pocketed the drive. "We'll verify it. If there's more you're hiding, we'll know." Daniel let out a frustrated exhale. "Don't ever come here again," he warned, "or you might not like what happens." Jonathan exchanged a glance with Andrew, then nodded to Sophie. They had what they needed for now. As they exited into the pounding rain, none of them felt triumphant. The encounter had revealed the depths of bitterness in Daniel's soul, and while it seemed they had momentarily diffused the crisis, the tension still clung to them like the damp chill of the storm. Hours after confronting Daniel, Jonathan and Sophie returned to the mansion, exhausted but cautiously hopeful. Andrew stayed behind to analyze the thumb drive. If Daniel had handed over every compromising photo, they might be free from further threats, at least from him. But what about Lily? That evening, Sophie rested in the drawing room, sipping warm milk and trying to calm the baby's constant kicks. Stress had obviously affected the child, as her movements were more frantic than usual. Jonathan joined her, taking a seat across from her. He looked drained, shadows under his eyes, hair still slightly damp from the downpour. "I never imagined it would go this far," he said quietly, fiddling with the cufflinks on his shirt. "I wanted excitement, I guess. Something different from the endless business dinners and polite charity events." Sophie listened, her expression pensive. "You should have talked to me," she replied, voice soft. "Marriage isn't just about celebrating good times. It's about confronting dissatisfaction head-on, together." He nodded, face filled with regret. "I know that now, and I hate that you had to learn about it this way, through evidence. A confrontation, blackmail. I've hurt you deeply." Leaning forward, he tried to meet her gaze. "I promise you, Lily's out of my life. If Daniel tries anything else, Andrew will handle it. But where does that leave us?" Sophie stared at the swirling milk in her cup. Part of her wanted to push him away forever, to start anew without the stain of betrayal. Another part believed in the vow they'd made, the family they were about to become. "I don't know," she admitted. "We'll need more than just a promise. You've broken my trust." He swallowed hard. "I'll prove it through counseling, through transparency, whatever it takes. I've ended the affair. I'm done with the lies." Sophie nodded, tears welling. "We'll see. For the baby's sake, I'm willing to see if there's still a path forward." Just as they allowed themselves a moment of fragile peace, Jonathan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the caller ID, lips thinning. "It's Andrew," he said, picking up. After a brief conversation, he ended the call and turned to Sophie. Andrew found that Daniel did indeed have multiple photos and short video clips. "The drive looks legitimate, no signs of files withheld." She let out a long breath, relief, easing some tension. "That's one crisis handled. Andrew suggests we file a formal complaint against Daniel anyway, to keep him from resurfacing," Jonathan added. "He's still dangerous." Sophie agreed. "Yes. We can't let him lurk in the background waiting for another chance." Jonathan rose from his chair, crossing to the sofa where Sophie sat. Tentatively, he placed a hand over hers. She didn't pull away, though her body remained tense. "Thank you for standing by me, even when I don't deserve it," he whispered. She looked at him, her eyes rimmed with tears. "I'm standing by our child. And maybe, if you show me the man I married is still there, I'll stand by you again too." In that tentative accord, they found a small glimmer of possibility, a sense that the worst might be behind them. But neither Sophie nor Jonathan could ignore the truth. The damage done by the affair and the near-public scandal would take a lifetime to mend, if it ever truly healed. In the ensuing weeks, a hushed calm settled over the Maxwell mansion. Through Andrew Carlisle's interventions, Daniel Fletcher faded from the immediate picture, presumably to avoid criminal charges. Lily Ross, having lost her foothold in Jonathan's life, quietly vacated her penthouse paid off by Jonathan to cover any pending lease obligations. She left behind only a terse message that read, "You'll regret pushing me aside." But no further contact came, and Jonathan tried to focus his energy on rebuilding the shattered fragments of his marriage. He and Sophie began attending couples therapy sessions with a renowned counselor, Dr. Harriet Winslow, who specialized in high-profile relationships. The sessions were grueling. Dr. Winslow probed into Jonathan's sense of entitlement and Sophie's willingness to overlook red flags. Tears were shed, painful confessions surfaced, and at times it felt as though they might only unravel further. Yet, amid the discomfort, a small kernel of hope took root. For the first time in months, even years, they were talking honestly about their fears, their unhappiness, and the dull ache that had settled in their once vibrant marriage. They confronted how easy it was for Jonathan to seek escape rather than address the emptiness he felt, and how Sophie, burdened by her own insecurities, had sometimes retreated into silence rather than stand up for her needs. Slowly, a renewed closeness began to blossom. Jonathan cut down his grueling schedule, inviting Sophie to spend afternoons exploring art exhibits or strolling in the botanical gardens, shared experiences that once formed the core of their bond. He recognized that the excitement he sought with Lily could be found in the genuine connection he and Sophie once enjoyed, if only he nourished it rather than neglect it. Meanwhile, Sophie found some healing in painting again. She dared to approach the canvas with the raw emotional chaos of the past few months. Her paintings became bolder, more intense, and colleagues at her former gallery took notice. She received offers for small exhibitions, a sign that despite her heartbreak, her spirit remained vibrant and creative. One cool autumn evening, just weeks shy of her due date, Sophie and Jonathan walked the estate grounds hand in hand, the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink across the horizon. Neither spoke for a while, content to share the moment. Sophie paused by a fountain, placing a hand on her belly as the baby responded with a lively kick. Jonathan rested his palm alongside hers, smiling at the movement. "We'll be parents soon," he said, voice husky with emotion. Sophie nodded. "Yes, and that child deserves our best selves. No more secrets." He lifted her hand to his lips. "Agreed. From now on, we face everything together." When they returned to the mansion, the final rays of twilight shining on the grand facade, it felt like the dawn of a new era. The betrayal wasn't forgotten. Scars never vanish entirely, but each day offered a chance for redemption. And so they stood on the precipice of change, willing to learn from the pain, determined to nurture whatever spark still existed between them. Whether or not they fully reclaimed their former love, they would face the future on honest ground, guided by the precious new life soon to arrive and the hard-won wisdom they had gained from surviving their darkest hour. Secrets eventually surface, no matter how carefully we try to bury them. In this story, Jonathan's search for excitement nearly shattered the life he'd built with Sophie, revealing just how destructive hidden desires can become. From the quiet halls of a mansion to the demands of a blackmailer, every step tested their resilience, forcing them to confront the cracks in their marriage. Ultimately, Sophie and Jonathan had to decide whether the promise they once made was worth salvaging or if it was better left behind. In the end, redemption is seldom simple, and forgiveness doesn't erase scars. Yet they chose to fight for a future tied not by illusions, but by hard-won honesty and the promise of new life. If you found this tale gripping, if it stirred your heart, sparked curiosity, or offered a glimmer of hope, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that delve deep into the human heart.